Excellency Ambassador Cesar. It's a real pleasure to meet you, and we would like to thank you for accepting the interview. My name is Marta Chodalska, and I'm here with my colleague Anna Sarfati. We are from Institute for Cultural Diplomacy. And I would like to begin by asking Your Excellency about your personal career. Hailing from multicultural background and having lived in Africa and Europe, what inspired you to become a diplomat?
First, I would add, having lived in Canada too, in North America, so I've been in the 3 continents. It's difficult for me to respond to that question, specifically when you say the inspiration, because as an ambassador you are nominated. Actually, it's not the job that you are applying for, so it's more of a vote of confidence that you receive from the country. So talking about being inspired to be an ambassador, in my case, I wouldn't start by saying that I was inspired, to do my job as an ambassador. I've been given this responsibility. However, my multicultural background has probably had an impact on the choice. The fact that I've been living in 3 different continents has given me a lot of experience dealing with different culture, different people with different background as well, not on a personal level, but as well as in my career, in my normal career. I've been working a lot with different cultures. And in this case, when we go specifically to Germany, the fact that I was born in Germany by a German mother and a Rwandan father makes me already a good fit to be a bridge of 2 countries who are all related to me. So I think those will be the traits that I think were important in my view. But as I said, I wouldn't be able to speculate on the reasons why or what, because I'm not the one who chose myself. I was chosen.
So, as you said, you have lived in many different countries belonging to various cultural circles. How did it help you to work in international milieu?
Well, first, being in contact with different culture opens up the ability to be able to communicate with different cultural environment. But it also gives you the tool to be more open and understanding, and instead of being resistant to other cultures. So and it reinforces at the same time our sense of being. So it reinforces, contrary to many popular belief that when you learn a new culture you tend to forget your culture. Actually, from experience I know that it's the contrary that is true. The more you learn about other culture, the more you get a better reference to your own culture. So that in mind, having been exposed to different culture really habilitated me to be able to communicate cross-culturally and to be able to convey actually the needs of one culture towards another culture. In diplomacy, it's very important. It's not only how do you convey the information to the other, it's also how do you understand the other to make sure that what you want to convey, you really convey it correctly. So it's not about me only understanding my country, it's also about understanding the country I'm dealing with.
And what has been the main focus of your work since your appointment as ambassador?
Well, given the history of the relationship of the two countries that are based a lot on building bridges between the two countries in terms of cultural bridges, the bridges of know-how, which means the pillar that we have been focusing a lot with Rwanda was also the education. And then now, given the development in which Rwanda is right now, which is a fast-growing economic developing country, we are gearing also here in our search to building more cooperation on the economical level, meaning making sure that companies of Rwanda can work with companies of Germany and vice versa. So mainly I would say our big pillars that we are using, actually we've been focusing on here in Germany, was the education pillar and the economical pillar.
Mm-hmm. And you have very rich experience in cultural associations and charity fields. Until 2015 you were active mostly in NGOs. What inspired you to involve into public sector and become a diplomat?
Well, as I said in the first place, it's not a question of having been inspired. I've been doing what I did best, whether on the private sector or on the social sector, the NGO sector, where it was always about building bridges between people, between countries, and trying to put together interests in order to build people, their well-being. And if you look at my personal track record on that one, it was mostly, through, as you say, non-governmental organizations, whether being in Canada, being in Rwanda, being even through Germany in a way. My focus, probably due also to the history of Rwanda, was always trying to build human dignity through community development, but also when we talk about community development, you have to talk also about economic development. So, and the NGOs I've been working with were actually about that, about helping people to get together, but to better their economical well-being. What I learned through my activities in NGOs that might be pertinent to what I'm doing today, first is we work in an environment of many culture. So you are always challenged in a way of trying to communicate with others, but getting the best, looking at the best of both in order to build. So in that sense, I would say, that helps also in the diplomacy. The diplomacy in this case is finding interests of two countries and put them together, using your human skills, because at the end of the day it's all about connecting with the other. So diplomacy is a personal connection, building networks that inspire people actually to invest in your country, and vice versa. So NGOs prepare you for that, because NGOs sometimes you have to sell an idea without even getting a gain in it, a material gain from it. So I think it's quite more difficult than having to represent a country and actually finding mutual benefits that are material gained. So NGOs prepare you actually for the worst bargaining tools. And in this case, I would say, you know, having had the NGO background, I've been able to move people from their heart to be able to do something. And now I don't need only to move people from their heart, actually I move them from their interest. So it's easier, it's an easier job, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we'll now turn to the subject of German-Rwandan relations. And I would like to ask you, can you point out any notable moments, any key pivotal changes in German-Rwandan relations since they were established in 1963?
Well, you know, even though we know that German, when we talk about the embassy, the bilateral relations started in 1963, it would be good to point out that the relationship between Germany and Rwanda is it's much older. So the Germans have been in Rwanda since the late 19th century, throughout the First World War, where they left after the First World War, which had already an impact in the way German was viewed by Rwanda. So even though if I want to talk about the relationship in 1963, it's important to mention that this relationship existed already prior to that and had an impact also even in linguistics. I would use, today we use the word Schule to mean Ishule. So we're using some German, there are some German words that were there because of that first contact. By talking about the relationship now since 1963, is the official relationship started there with Rwanda. It's a relationship that was based on first mutual respect, and that was also characterized. You'll be surprised. It was also characterized in before the First World War, in the first contact in the colonial time. I guess there was a sense of mutual respect between Rwandans and Germany, beyond, you know, what normally in colony existed. So we talk about, you know, I'm talking about mutual respect. A major impact on that time was the establishment of station relay, of radio relay, to actually broadcast Deutsche Welle throughout Africa, and the relay was built actually in Rwanda in 1963, and the first broadcasting was in 1965. So that was one major impact, because physically Germans actually moved to Rwanda and occupied a land that was quite significant. So you had a sort of a village, a German village in Rwanda in terms of media. So that impact on its own brought Germany to Rwanda through radio. I remember even as a young boy living in the neighboring country in Burundi, hearing the sound of Deutsche Welle and, you know, what kind of impact. So the connection between Rwanda and Germany started actually with a major relationship through the media. And it continued on many other aspects, specifically on building communities. So you have the relationship was based on technical cooperation, financial cooperation, yes. And when we talk about financial cooperation and technical cooperation, it started around the 70s, 77. That's when the technical and the financial cooperation late. Financial cooperation 77, 79, the technical cooperation. So both in the 70s, various projects were built through that cooperation, and the projects were, you know, redefined every 3 years. 1982 till 1984, a new element in which was not necessarily bilateral cooperation, a land in Germany, the land Rhénanie-Palatinat, entered into a partnership with Rwanda, building also a community relationship of what Germans called Beziehung auf Augenhöhe, which meant a relationship on the same level of eyes. So that partnership has survived even the period of the genocide and beyond. So today we're talking about 250 schools being built by that partnership, with 50 communities actually being involved. So those had a much human impact, direct human impact with Rwandan, where Rwandan people in the community and German communities were put together to build the education system. When we talk about the technical and the financial cooperation, that was based mainly at building the technical vocational training centers, building up on also financial cooperation for development, and building up also on institutional empowerment, institutional development through exchange of expertise, and from German bringing the expertise to Rwanda, and Rwandans actually coming to learn the expertise here. So that's really historically the relationship that was built. But on the bilateral level, many visits already from our president between 2002 to 2010. We had 6 different visits of our president here. We're talking 2012, our Minister of Foreign Affairs came here. But at the same time, we have many delegations from Germany actually going to Rwanda. Among some names I could mention here will be the President of Germany, His Excellency Horst Kohler, who came, former president who came to Rwanda, who came in March 2008. We are talking about, we can also mention other senior officials, different time, like Honorable Klaus Klinke, Federal Foreign Minister in 1996, Joschka Fischer, Deputy Prime Minister, and Federal Foreign Minister in 2005, Honorable Dirk Niebel, Federal Minister for Economic, and Federal Cooperation and Development in 2013, Mrs. Claudia Roth from the Green Party, the Vice President of the German Parliament in June 2014, a group of 7 MPs, and I would say in 2015 actually the more recent visit will be the visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Frank-Walter Steinmeier. So as you can see over years, it was not only Germany has been had an impact to the development of Rwanda on a grassroots level, but it had also survived ups and downs of Rwanda. And that's what's very important. Actually, by the way, Germany was the first country that re-established relationship after the genocide and participate actually in the rebuilding of the country. So I would say our relationship as we speak is an ongoing, growing relationship that started from the grassroots level to also the partnership on the leadership level.
Okay, thank you. So you stressed that the financial, technical, and media cooperation are the pillars of the relationship. But we'd like to know what about the cultural aspect, and more specifically, what kind of work does the embassy do to promote Rwandan culture or the dialogue between German and Rwandan culture in Berlin and also in Germany?
When we talk about grassroots, first, when we talk about grassroots relationship, the first vehicle of any grassroots relationship starts with culture. It's two people meeting and then two community meeting as a result. So I told you also about the story of Deutsche Welle being the first really institution, which is the biggest vehicle. Media is the biggest vehicle of culture, actually. When you think, the first impact of that relationship was cultural, actually. To the point, even right now, when we're talking about cultural development, Deutsche Welle Academy has built, for instance, the first film academy it's working with the film academy in Rwanda and helping young people to tell their story, actually, by the means of the media. So that has has culminated even last year at the Berlinale here in Germany. Rwanda was represented in the Berlinale through actually the Rhineland-Pfalz partnership. They presented the Rwandan film instead of Rhineland-Pfalz presenting a German film. They presented Rwandan films in the Berlinale. So that kind of cultural exchange permits even the Rwandan culture to be presented here. We have been using, one of the pillars of our development is tourism. We've been involved here each year in the International Tourism Fair here in Berlin. And the biggest mean that we use in the International Tourism Fair is cultural representation. That puts actually our exhibition on the first rank for the last 3 years. We were among the first 10 exhibitors in the exhibition here. The other thing that I must mention, since after the genocide, Rwanda has put a lot of emphasis in building the human being Rwandan, and having built a development based on integrating the people. And in the same framework, when we talk about diplomacy, Rwanda, we like to say we have 5 provinces in Rwanda. Rwanda is composed by 5 provinces, and the diaspora being the 6th province of the country. So within our diplomacy, being in touch with our people from Rwandan origin becomes very important. So we are in even our students who are coming to study here through the cooperation, their impact is not, they are not only students, they become also our cultural diplomats. So they are, wherever they are, when you go to Kaiserslautern today, where we have around 70 students, they have their drum troupe, they make an impact in the community by exhibiting cultural events. We promote here in Germany various cultural events, and we participate also. As we speak, I'm proud to say today that we have right now the Rwandan diaspora community has a summer camp of young youth, actually Rwandan youth of Rwandan origin, where they learn about their country of origin, and they're empowered by having those answers. You know, who I am, what are the values. Yesterday they were on a visit here at the embassy, and we gave them a sort of a tour. I would say a fast tour on Rwanda, on Rwandan values, what we stand for as a people. But at the same time, we realized that the Rwandan community abroad, you know, they've expressed many, they expressed some need of learning the language. So from the embassy here through the community, we helped organize, and right now we have Kinyarwanda classes here every two weeks. So we have young Rwandans and Germans actually who come to learn Kinyarwanda. So by that we are continuing to connect to the community. And just to tell you the impact, you know, of we truly believe that the development of Rwanda is not a development of Rwandans not only living in Rwanda, it's a development where a Rwandan, wherever you are, we promote that you can be actually part of that development. And we take it very seriously, because when you think of today, you know, the direct investment just coming from the diaspora is almost equal to the aid that came to through corporations. So it's a big part. With that, of course, Rwanda is represented. I will give you good examples every time when our president travels abroad and visits a country. He tends also to stop and promote a cultural day. We call it the Rwanda Day. Those Rwanda days we had, last one we had here in Europe was in Holland, and it attracts, I would say, for one event, it attracts over 4,000 Rwandans from the diaspora from all over, not just one country. If we come, he was in Holland, we had people from Rwandans who came from all over, who are gathering together through cultural event and listening to the possibilities that are out there to contribute to the development of their country. So culture for us is a very enabler, actually, of our development. And the embassy, we use a lot cultural events actually to attract, to make us known, but at the same time we think that we as a people we can contribute to the fiber of humanity, because I think if you look at our track record after the horror that we have lived in the genocide, being able within 22 years reconcile people, creating unity, you have to have a strong culture actually to be able to. And Rwanda has been able to reconnect with its own history, reconnect with its own culture, to unite people. And that we want to also convey it wherever we are.
Okay, thank you. So just to close off the topic, you mentioned the vast areas of cooperation between both countries, but do you think that there's room for improvement so that cooperation can be expanded to other sectors?
Of course, of course. As I said, historically, most of the cooperation, and this is not unique to Rwanda, most of cooperation north-south have been through cooperation of aid, through, but Rwanda is one of those countries in Africa that is developing very fast. So this fast-track development changes also the face of cooperation as has been historically. That means, you know, the emphasizes just of building a social aid network has to change into actually a more economical, sustainable development approach. And that's where we are heading. That's the challenge that we are pushing actually Germany to. And I think to say it fairly, Germany is also changing. You know, when you look at the way the world is right now, where, you know, the emphasis of development and, you know, human cohesion is needed actually in order to foster this stability in our region, and we have been doing very, very well. So among things that I think we need to change is the image of this hopeless Africa, and to see actually this hopeful Africa that is developing fast, where new technologies are being applied, sometimes in ways that even Germany could learn from. So I always give, you know, I just had my two sons visiting for the first time Rwanda, and they are texting me in the car as we are talking there in Rwanda. So they are texting me in the car going to the rainforest, the Nyungwe forest. And they're saying, oh, well, you know, I'm going to text you again to tell you how we are doing because we have Wi-Fi in the car. You know, those are things that you wouldn't necessarily think, you know, when you look at what we are bombarded here every time on the image of what Africa is. So we're talking about things that you see today in Rwanda, where, you know, we're the first country that is using drones in a civil way, where, you know, they are using drones, where the first one to test drones delivering actually our, you know, blood to the laboratory, or bringing medication to the healthcare centers. So there are things that are happening in the continent, and we would like Germany to be part of that success story, and as we are working already together, you know, to be more involved on company basis, being putting more investment in Rwanda. And in order to achieve that, I think tourism is the first enabler. So if you go back to the idea of culture being the enabler, so tourism is the first thing that we push a lot, because we believe that once you have visited Rwanda, other things will come. That means you'll start to see, oh yeah, maybe I should invest here. So anyone who has been able to visit Rwanda had a chance actually to think even further in investing in Rwanda. So it's a viable country where, you know, you have people who came back to Rwanda from various continents, as myself, and who are building a country, you know, who are transforming a country in a true model actually for Africa. So when we talk about, you know, change, what do I think we could change? We should come out from the aid mentality to actually the cooperation, the true cooperation, economical cooperation. And I think we are on the right track right now. Germany is following well. Yeah. And for that, I will give you an example. In Hamburg on September 14th, actually, we will have a sort of a Hamburg Rwanda Day, where, you know, we'll be exhibiting our culture, but our economy too, and trying to connect Rwanda with Germany through businesses.
So now let us turn to the topic of cultural diplomacy. You had said that even Rwandan students can be cultural diplomats, which means that ordinary people can be actual diplomats. So I would like to ask you, what is your definition of cultural diplomacy?
Well, I always come back on the idea when we talk diplomacy, most of the time we talk about two countries' relations. But those two countries' relations, they are always driven by the people. So since they are driven by the people, it's about connecting people. If you connect people, then you spark the desire of working together and do something more than just being connected. So cultural diplomacy in this context becomes, for me, using actually culture as a connector. And that's why I said it's even simple people can do that diplomacy, because if wherever you are, you know that you are representing your country and you show the beauty of it, and culture is something that has that is an easy connector, because you connect people from the human level right away without, you know. So that's, if you ask me, cultural diplomacy in a nutshell. It's in that framework that I see it.
So would you say that cultural diplomacy is a way of communication between different cultures? Would you, to what extent would you think cultural diplomacy can be an effective tool for conflict resolution?
I will go back to my own country. I believe, you know, that when we look at our culture, the Rwandan culture, and the Rwandan values, actually genocide should have never happened in Rwanda. Because culturally, we have a belief in Rwanda where we say, you know, you only exist because the other one exists. So the other person's existence is a prerequisite for you to exist. So in such type of thinking, actually genocide shouldn't take place. So, but genocide took place with the whole historical background that led to it. For us to reconstruct our people and bring back trust in a situation where the social fabric was completely destroyed, we had to go back into our own history, into our culture. Who are we? And by reconnecting Rwandans with their own history, actually, and with their own culture, we managed actually to see a Rwandan that are more unified. So actually it was going back into our own culture to see our commonality and not see actually our differences, and redefine ourselves in looking forward to the future. So culture is the biggest enabler actually when it comes to our own history. It's through we, you know, after the genocide we had lost over 1 million of our citizens. That means we had over 1 million of perpetrators, citizens. So how do you go by when you talk about our justice system? It was very difficult to rebuild to be able to rebuild the community with a normal justice system like we have it here. So we had to go back into our own culture to see, okay, how did we solve our problems? So Gacaca became a response to us. We've been able to trial. We're talking to trial over 1 million people in how many in such that short time, and bring them back into into their community, rebuilding the community. So if it wasn't of that of the culture, going back into our culture, what was presented to us in the world wasn't really helping us. So culture is a big enabler when we talk about unifying people, trying to bring conflict resolution. In our case, the biggest example would be the Gacaca courts. It was so. The other thing, you know, when you use culture, you are actually reinforcing the people and cross boundaries. You're creating cross boundaries. So culture elevates actually people to a level where they see more their commonality than their differences. So it is a tool. At least when it comes to Rwanda, it did help us today overcome. And I think, and I believe right now that Rwanda has much to bring to the rest of the world when it comes to using culture as conflict in the conflict resolution.
So it leads us to my next question. So you had described the cultural relations between Germany and Rwanda, but what is your vision for future Rwandan-German cultural cooperation?
Well, as I said, communication never stops. It starts, but it never stops. And the relationship with Rwanda started with communication, and has been reinforced also with communication. We're talking about in Rwanda today we have even the Goethe Institute where you can actually learn the language, and we hope that we are having the same impact here at the embassy as we speak. You know, when people come to learn German, Kinyarwanda, that we are also contributing somehow in that culture. And it's in that framework that I wish in the future, you know, that people will be able to communicate more, so that they know each other, to travel, you know, so that they connect that we connect the two people, German and Rwandan. So it's all about creating those opportunities of connecting. The leaders are doing it. We have delegations that are coming Rwandan delegation. The negotiation, the intergovernmental negotiations, they are made alternatively from either in Germany or in Rwanda, and Rwanda, Germany. So on the leadership, that communication is being built. Now on the tourism sector, on doing business, I think those being able to connect people and expose more and more our mutual culture. And I must say, it's always very funny for people. I can at least testify it because I come from those two cultures. My mother being German and my father being Rwandan. I've benefited from that contact, from that cultural exchange. And I've realized actually the basic values are actually the same. The basic values are so similar that it makes it actually possible, these two cultures to meet and actually to nourish each other. So for me, what I see in the future is more connection, more contact between people, more exchange on the know-how, on the education level, but specifically also on the economical part.
Okay, so in light of your professional experience, what would be your advice to young people who wish to pursue a career in diplomacy or other international organizations?
Be involved. Since it's not a job that you apply for, but it's your involvement. Be involved in your community. Be relevant to you, to the community around you, to the country, and to the continent, and if necessary, to the global context. So it's being involved. See beyond what you are doing, we live in a world where specifics are more important right now, where everything is very specific. And because of that, the relevancy within a community, outside the community, and in a global environment becomes lesser and lesser. It becomes more precise what you are doing. So you have to be able to deconstruct yourself. Go out there, be involved, think more than you, and that I can only come back to a single value that I've grown up to learn, and that I've learned from Rwanda, by the way, is the notion of ubuntu. What in Kinyarwanda we use today the word ubumuntu, and in other countries in the region linguistically they use ubuntu. Ubuntu, which means humanity. A human being, you deserve actually to be, you become a human being. You are not born only a human being, you become a human being. So humanity is an action, is in action, it's not something that is static. And ubuntu in Kinyarwanda means, I only exist because the other exists. So it asks you actually to go beyond you. And I think if you think in that way, to your relevancy within your surrounding, within, I think the more you use that, the more you become relevant, and probably one day, if you want to go to diplomacy, you will probably be the most suited because you had an impact to beyond yourself.
Thank you. So finally, I'd like to close off the interview by asking you, what do you think that people in their own daily lives and interactions can do to ensure a harmonious coexistence in today's multicultural societies? What do you think can be done in our daily lives to ensure that we have a harmonious coexistence with the diversity of cultures present in our societies today? Do you think there are any particular practices that we can have, that we can integrate to kind of ensure that there is a better communication between people?
Yeah, I think in many cultures, including the Rwandan culture, they in initiations they push you to go out of your comfort zone. And I think is the exercise of going outside of your comfort zone helps you actually opening up to the other. So I think what you can do on the daily life, even for our children and so on, is creating those environments where kids are getting out of their comfort zone. So not being afraid of the other. The Rwandan culture has been a culture that has thought itself as a center, but a center outward, not outward inward. So which compels people actually always to go outside, to see, to actively actually go in search of the other. And I think if you actively, regularly put yourself in an environment that you don't necessarily master, in the world today where I say change is the only constant, then you are preparing a kid actually to live in harmony with the world. It's adapting to the change, and the adapting to the change is taking you outside first of your comfort zone. We lived it through living in different countries. As a kid, I speak today, as a result, I speak today 6 languages. As a result, I know that 6 languages is 6 more, it's not 6 less. I came from a culture here in Germany where I was asked all the time, so how do you feel? Do you feel German or do you feel something else? Because the notion of the other was more scary than, the notion of being. For me, actually, knowing the other made me know better who I am. So that's why I say, if we help people always get out of their comfort zone and adapt them to change, if we prepare that in an active role, I think we'll have lesser miscommunication or misunderstanding. But at the end of the day, I think it helps you to have empathy because you have been in the shoes of the other. That's what it is, actually putting someone in an out of its context. It's actually giving him the opportunity to be in another context, to understand actually the other. Yeah.
Okay, well that concludes our interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure for us.
Thank you.